It's the 60th anniversary of Beatles For Sale, so what better time to revisit an album often ranked, fairly or otherwise, at the bottom of the Beatles discography? Join me as we spin 4 random tracks to find out if the price was too high, or perhaps just right. Hi, and welcome to Acting is Reacting, where today we are putting another classic album through the random 4-play treatment. Now, that is where I simply hit shuffle on an album and we listen to the first 4 songs that come up with chat, general appreciation, and sometimes critique along the way. It's fun, trust me. I wouldn't lie to you, would I? So, with Beatles For Sale, it has to be said that it feels that there is an element of Russian roulette with this one. It's not generally regarded amongst their best, not even one of the best of the early albums. And yet, there's still much to love and admire on here. So, let's hope we hit the highs and avoid the lows. But hey, whatever happens, the gods of randomness have got a fun one in store for us today. So, if you like the Beatles, make sure to hit like on this video. Ta! With the Beatles, no, we're doing Beatles For Sale, but you know what I mean. There is a fair chance that the music portion of this video will be blocked. So if that has happened, check out the description below and there will be a Vimeo link taking you to something where you can see the whole thing with the music intact. Otherwise, just stay here for the discussion side of things. But I will head straight on in to our first random track of the day, and that is going to be this one. Okay, well, we avoided stepping on any landmines for our first song of the day. Paul's not wild about the song. He calls it a bit of filler for the album, and that possibly highlights what's wrong with Beatles For Sale in general. It was obviously on one side of my head as we were listening, but here's the actual thing. Funnily enough, because this album has such a poor reputation, it's one of the last Beatles albums I've got, which is the only reason that I actually have a physical copy to show you, because I had just about everything by them, apart from this and Let It Be, long before I moved from one side of the world to this side of the world. So my mum's got the rest, and she probably doesn't play them much, even though she grew up with all this stuff. What can I tell you? A little bit more context about this album then before we dive into the next few tracks. As far as those who are not in the US are concerned, this was the Beatles' 4th album and came barely 5 months after the 3rd, which was, of course, A Hard Day's Night. And see the end screen for a quick link to me checking that one out. Now, so this one's often seen as kind of a rear backward step for the group because we had the return of a bunch of covers on here, whereas Hard Day's Night had been entirely devoid of outside material for the first time. Taylor's original liner notes are recreated in the booklet of this reissue, and, well, they might have seemed optimistic at the time, talking of the Beatles' music being timeless and ageless, and of kids of the far-flung future in AD 2000 getting them. But, well, history has proved him right, hasn't it? And there's also the irony that a mere 2.5 years before Sgt. Pepper, he's praising the general lack of gimmicks and recording tricks on the album and noting that there's little or nothing here that can't be reproduced on stage. How swiftly things would change, eh? Okay, well, let's head back to the album and hear another 2 tracks back to back and hope that we get even better than what we've already heard, because there's better to be found, but there's also much worse. Let's see. Random track 2 will be... Okay, so if you didn't join us where the music is, if it's not here, then you might think you're feeling pretty pleased with yourself at the moment, because we just hit 2 of the covers. One of the decent covers, rock and roll music, and then one of the most wretched things ever with the Beatles' name on top of it. The Ringo-led Honey Don't. Oh boy. I mean, it's not quite 3 minutes, but it's still painful. Hey, it means that our final track in a moment is going to be an improvement. Almost certainly. Now, interesting enough, I mentioned Derek Taylor's liner notes before. I think he and possibly they were aware that that was the dud of the track list, because he mentions that the album is full of raw John and melodic Paul, a number from George, and a bonus from Ringo. Yeah, bonus tracks 30 years before they were a thing. Anyway, but yeah, rock and roll music, decent. Not much more to say about it than that. The real gems in this album are John's originals, which we haven't yet hit one of, so hopefully we'll find one very shortly. Normally I don't go with albums that have anything quite so bad on it. Even still, hitting my least favourite track on one of these is kind of... well, it doesn't happen every time, but it happens a lot more than I'd like. But hey, I'm still enjoying myself. I hope you are too. Let's dive into our fourth and final track of the random foreplay, uh, and that is going to be.
I'm a
Whew,
loser.
that's all the time we had to hear from that. If we had started with Babies in Black, we would have followed with Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby, the other Carl Perkins cover on here. I Don't Want to Spoil the Party, and Every Little Thing. So it was really saving all the good stuff for towards the end. We didn't get 8 days a week. I'll Follow the Sun, No Reply. Hey, we had a good time, didn't we? Yeah. Okay, so we did end up on a good one of John's tunes, and one that had been considered single-worthy or potential single-worthy before I Feel Fine emerged, and that was released as a standalone single, as they did end those days instead. So I mentioned earlier that this is what people outside the US view as the fourth album, but of course it was repackaged, and most of it ended up on Beatles 6, I think. I don't really know the American albums. If you're in America, which a fair chunk of people who are kind enough to watch this channel are, I'm told by my YouTube analytics, if you were there in the 60s and you knew Beatles 6 and not Beatles for Sale, how do you view this album now? Is it a strange beast? Is Beatles 6 still the real album for you? I'm curious to know, so do drop a comment down below and tell me. And anybody else is welcome to drop comments down below and tell me anything they like or think as well. You never run out of space in the comment section, let's put it that way. So yeah, I don't know that we solved anything. Is this an underrated Beatles album? Probably not. Probably something has to be down the bottom, and this might well be it. It's kind of on a par with the Beatles for me personally, but yeah, it is a big drop off from A Hard Day's Night, which is to me, as I said when I reviewed that album, pretty much the perfect pop album ever made. Uh, but they also worked something approaching magic in order to get something this good so quickly after that. Few others could have done it, and well, the average quality of a 1964 album is not super high, and this is still up there with the very best of what was coming out in that year. So the fact that they'd go on within the next year or two to make things that were so much better is just astonishing, really. It was then, it still is. As worst albums go, and I'm not counting Yellow Submarine because that's not really an album, is it? Um, this ain't too shabby. Nice one to have to complete the collection at the very least. And there are some real gems on it. Most of which we managed to avoid hearing today accidentally, but that's randomness for you. And yeah, Ringo fans, don't come at me because I love Ringo dearly, I do. But this is the beginning of, I think, 4 albums in a row where he sings the one track I don't like, or at least the track I like even less than the others. And we get to act naturally on Help. Not quite at all. But that said, I do like Boys from Please Please Me, which puts me in, I think, a minority of one. So there's that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the revisit of Beatles for Sale with me today. And if you did enjoy this format, I do something like this every couple of weeks, and amongst all sorts of other cool musicy stuff. So make sure to subscribe down below to make sure you're always caught up with what's going on. As I mentioned a few months ago, A Hard Day's Night got the random foreplay treatment. So see what happened there, one side of my head, and on the other, YouTube have another recommendation just for you. So either way, thanks for watching today, and I'll just say bye for now, but I hope not for long.
Acting is reacting. This does not mean acting again.